everybody, and welcome to the Backbone Podcast, where common sense still makes sense in a world that is sick and only getting sicker. And by the banner, as you can tell here, we're going to cover what everybody and their mama is talking about right now, and that's the Jordan Peterson ambush. This was supposed to be a debate, Jordan Peterson versus 20 atheists. Who probably share about 3 brain cells between them. Now the mainstream media and even some conservative Christians that I've been reading about and watching videos about are all fawning on the side. They're lauding these kids who basically attacked Peterson. I mean, this was not a debate. A debate is when, one person makes a point, then the other person makes a point, and they do a little back and forth. This was unadulterated bashing. I mean, they're quick fire questions, they're interrupting, the double talk and the word salad, and these kids are just, I mean, if this is the future of the world, we're in deep shit. Mother of God. Now, of course, this is off of, what's the name of this, I think it's called Jubilee, I think, or, Jubilee web YouTube channel for informational purposes. We're going to go through some of the more interesting fireworks that happened here. Of course, there's different questions that always tell, it's the usual questions. What's worship, and do you worship Mary, and do you, if Nazis were at the door, would you tell them that Jews are in your attic? It's the same garbage. We'll go over it briefly, and then we'll go on to the main memo. So let's start off with this simpleton over here, Jordan Peterson. Now, of course, this is the. Let me just break down how the format is. Peterson will ask a question. So the claim is atheists reject God, but they don't understand what they're rejecting. Absolutely true. I would say that there are some points in time where atheists are more Bible thumpers than Bible thumping Christians, because they're so immersed in the Bible. And this guy over here claims to have been a failed priest. He probably wasn't smart enough to be it. You have to pass theology and stuff, and that's not easy. So this kid probably failed, probably got rejected, and now he's sore about it. And as you can tell, there's a bunch of atheists that surround a table set in the center there. There's a clock. So each question or each claim has, I think it's like 20 minutes. And after 3 or 4 minutes of debating an atheist, they then change. And they have a countdown, 3, 2, 1, and then kind of like musical chairs. The first person to touch the chair when they run up gets to talk to Peterson. This guy was first. So let's start it. Let's go right into it.
It's deep into the magisterium and biblical hermeneutics. Like, I was thoroughly in it. And it seems like I do know what I'm missing. Is there something that I missed over years of study, both this issue formally and living out religion so deeply?
Well, you obviously feel that you missed something when you were practicing for the priesthood.
How is Peterson supposed to know that? How is Peterson supposed to know what this kid is missing? Maybe this kid is just a nincompoop. How do we even know this is true? Peterson comes into this as a scholar and as a psychiatrist. He didn't come into this as debating a professional debater. And that's why I think a lot of people are criticizing him. He's trying to figure out these kids and at the same time lecture them about what they're getting wrong. And of course, they're kids, so they're being total immature assholes when you'll see how. But this kid saying, well, what am I missing? How the fuck should we know? You're the only person that can answer that. And this is why these kids need stoicism more than anybody else. They don't understand religion. They don't understand stoicism. They don't understand how it is to be men. This guy's, oh God.
Your aim was off then. So there's always the possibility that it's still off now.
What was off about my aim in the first place?
I don't know. That might take a long time to figure out.
But then it seems kind of like this no true Scotsman type of fallacy in which you're the arbiter of people's aims and how they understand those aims to be. How is it that you can claim that people don't know something that you know?
He never said anything like that. See, this is the double talk. This is what women do. So when you debate, or if you ever argue with a woman, and you should never, ever, ever argue with a woman, they will forget reason, and they will double talk, and then they will exude what is in their mind, and as illogical as it is, claim that you're saying this or you're making that claim. This is what this kid's doing here. We don't know what Jordan Peterson just met this guy. So this kid wants him to answer why he doesn't feel or he's connected to God or religion, why he couldn't finish being a priest, why he's making all these claims when Peterson hasn't said anything
About their life despite not having met them?
Well, it's obviously a generic claim, just like the atheist claim that there's no God is a generic claim. In your case, it would have to be specified more, and I'm not claiming to understand what was going on in your mind, but my experience with atheists is twofold, is that they have a very reductive notion of what constitutes God, let's say in the Judeo-Christian tradition, and they've often been hurt by someone who was religious or by the religious enterprise or perhaps by God himself, so to speak, and that.
There's the big one. A lot of people who are atheists or as Gnostics, they were rejected, or they may have been even hurt or abused. And, we pray for them if they have been, by someone from their religious community. So, of course, now they hate the religion because in their minds, God, they gave their life to God, or they trusted in God, and God betrayed them. So, well, there can't be a God now because he betrayed me. He's wrong. So there's no God. It's just the same way, like when a guy gets rejected by a woman, well, he hates all women now. It's that childish mentality. It's that reductive mentality.
That's left them with an animus.
But I think that you have a reductive view of what atheism is. You've defined religion so broadly to include any sort of having aim in life, any sort of cultural archetypes, or having a metaphorical substrate. And atheism to you is a very specific type of like three people in the world that are these Raskolnikov type of, they want to get away with a perfect murder. It seems like you have the reductive view of what an atheist is.
Well, let's start with your claim. How do you define the God that you're rejecting? Like, what is God to you? You studied in the church, you found that unsatisfactory. How would you characterize what you rejected?
I think the average Christian believer, when they say that they're Christian and they believe, they mean some sort of God that is all powerful, all perfect, is somehow involved in the matters of this world, and that we look to them through wisdom and with Logos incarnate in Christ. And it also seems like you don't believe in religion in the way that the average Christian says that they believe in religion. And there are as many gods out there as there are believers, because everybody has mutually exclusive and different views of what God is. So it seems
well,
like
if everybody had mutually exclusive views of what God is, no one could speak to each other. The mere fact of communication presumes a commonality of assumption and definition. And it's certainly not the case that I regard any archetypal manifestation whatsoever as equally religious. So that's not a real claim. Let me give you an example. For example, there's a sub-narrative in the story of Moses where Moses is rewarded with a glimpse of God. Okay, and that's one of the ways that God is characterized in the Old Testament stories.
yes.
Now, Moses is a faithful servant of God and a good man. At least that's the case within the confines of the story.
One possible interpretation.
It's the case within the confines of the story, obviously.
Well, not obviously. When we look at the Bible can't precisely say anything because there are so many different exegetical and hermeneutic views of this particular book, and that everybody has agreed everybody has disagreed historically on. It seems like even the most benign detail about a book this big. And it seems like you can only say that the Bible says something if you first presuppose that it's univocal.
So your claim essentially is that Moses in the Old Testament plays the role of a villain or is irrelevant? Because the alternative claim is that he's good. I'm saying that we can't know,
because we can't talk to those authors.
If you are going to start with the presupposition that there's nothing I can say about any of these stories that you're not going to disagree with from the perspective that there are multiple potential competing claims, then I can't speak with you. So
there's the problem. There is the problem with these people. They're all closed-minded. And you cannot evolve. And look at how angry these people are. They're angry. They're they just feel rejected, and you can tell that these are, most of them are probably vegans too. But they all have the same closed-minded attitude. You can't talk to these people. You have to just leave them alone. Because as I've put in the banner here, hell is a place where reason doesn't exist. Well, these people are trying to take you to their hell. They believe more in Christianity or in God than anybody else because they continue to fight him. It's on their minds 24/7, every day, forever, until the day they die. And they're so vehemently opposed to God. If God didn't exist, if it was such a silly topic, if this was not relevant, why would you dedicate your life to this? Who cares? I'm not dedicating my life to the fact that Santa Claus doesn't exist. I mean, he does, but I'm not dedicating my life to that. This is such an unbelievably, there's more to life than this. And these guys, of course, you can tell by these people, they don't have much going on. This is the only thing that they have going on. Now,
we also have a short time here, so I want to get to the core of what you're arguing here, and I'd love if we could.
The core of what I'm arguing is that atheists reject God, but they don't understand what they're rejecting. So I'm trying to give you an example of what's being rejected and its complexity. Okay, so God rewards Moses with a glimpse of the divine. So this is a definition of the God that atheists are hypothetically rejecting.
A possible one.
I said I didn't say the.
There's always got to be these guys are like last word freaks. They have to have the last word, or they have to, subject you with their claim. And it's just so childish and stupid. I don't understand why Peterson would even consider doing this.
I said
That is possible, yes.
Okay. So despite the fact that Moses is a stellar character and he's had a long and difficult life and can withstand a lot of difficulty and travail, God puts him between two cliffs so he can just see a crack of what's in front of him. And when God walks by, he allows him to see his back. Okay, so the implication of that story is that the divine is fundamentally unknowable. It's a pinnacle experience, and that people in their finitude have to be shielded from a comprehensive vision of the basis of reality. Well, that's not the God that's defined in that manner, right? It's not a simple personification. It's not a simple old man in the sky. It's something that in its essence is unknowable and overwhelming. And that isn't, in my experience, the God that's defined by atheists who are attempting to undermine the story. I mean, it's the same claim, for example, that you're a finite creature and that you face something that in the final analysis is unknowable, and that you have to establish a relationship with it regardless of your inability to perceive or even withstand perceiving the whole. Okay, is there a problem with that?
I mean, the problem is that when we look at, famously, when you've been asked, do you believe in God? The question becomes, what do we mean by God? And in the Bible, it's not even clear the biblical authors know what God is, because Yahweh has historically emerged from an early storm god, a deity that doesn't exhaust the category of deity, and that has changed over the Old Testament. Does God have physicality? Does God not have physicality? It seems like, yes, if you define religion to mean anybody that has an aim, anybody that looks at the unknown, anybody who wants to go from chaos to order is inherently religious, then yes. But also in the same way, I could define atheist as somebody who doesn't dogmatically believe in a religion, or somebody who doesn't regularly attend religious services or belong to a denomination. To help especially the audience kind of like boil this down, there was a lot of words there. That the central claim is that we exist somewhere between the finite and the infinite.
A central claim.
A central claim is that we exist somewhere between the finite and the infinite.
No, I said that we were finite and we had to establish a relationship with the infinite.
Yeah, then in that case, then we're all religious, but then I can do the same thing and define one particular element of atheism, it seems like we both have a reductive view of what the other side looks like, to the point where a conversation seems incoherent, and not just incoherent, but not in the way that the average Christian understands Christianity to be.
Do you have a
Okay,
problem
let's
with
pause there. Sorry, you've been voted out by
Awesome.
the majority.
All right, so that was the first one. Now, of course, they go on, and I just wanted to get into. I wanted to find the next one. Bear with me for one moment. This was the famous one where this kid talks about the whole Nazi. He brings up the whole Kant argument. Immanuel Kant, of course, in his 1797 writings. I forget the name of the book. I should know this. Geez. Well, Kant brought up the question of lying and sinning. And he brought up the question of if a murderer was at the door and you were sheltering his potential victim, and the murderer asked if the victim was in the house, would you lie and say, no, he's not here? Or would you say yes and allow the murderer to kill the victim? Now, of course, lying is a sin, but you have to weigh the lesser of two evils, right? Is handing over somebody to be murdered, or is handing somebody over to be murdered a grave sin? Yes. Is lying to protect that person's life a grave sin? No. It's a sin, but it's a little white sin, like a little white lie. And that sin could be saving your life and your family's life as well. And again, these kids all seem like worms. Now they're gonna run up.
This is what Ivy League universities you can get into with a 3.
I hate these commercials.
Hey, how's it going?
How
Nice to meet
doing?
you.
Nice to meet you, too.
David.
David, good to see you.
Tell me everything that you know about the
It isn't something that's associated with logical.
And purpose in some like notion of God that isn't the same type of notion of God that typical Christians would prescribe. Your notion of God is
What typical Christians?
yeah, typically when I talk to Christians, they say that they believe in an
How
all-knowing.
about Cardinal Newman, who defined God as
Again, now what the atheists always do is they always generalize, right? Oh, I spoke to every Christian on the planet. No, you haven't. He probably spoke to somebody who is a cafeteria Catholic like me. I know a little bit more than the average person. There I am generalizing. I've done my studying, and so I could combat some of the things that these guys are trying to say. I've also read a lot of guys like Kant and Rousseau and Voltaire, because these guys are always into the. They don't study. They basically go over the crib notes of the Enlightenment, and you'll see that evidence of that here.
conscience. He was a major influence on all of Catholic social theory. How about that, Christian?
Sure. So do you believe in the all-knowing, all-powerful, all-good notion of God?
What do you mean by believe?
Do you think it to be true?
That's the circular definition. What do you mean
How
when
is
you
that
say you
circular?
believe?
How is that circular?
Because you added no content to the answer by substituting the word true and believe.
I said you think it to be true.
All right. So if
What's
you
a belief?
believe something, you stake your life on it.
What do you mean by that?
You live for it and you die for it. That's what I mean by that. It isn't something that you say. It isn't something that's associated with logical consistency. It's not declarative. It's not propositional. It's not a figment of your imagination. It's the presupposition of your attention and your action. And you're either fragmented, in which case you worship multiple gods, or there's some unity at the bottom of it.
Do you think this to be true?
Now, the question of fragmenting, what a lot of people will say is that, well, you can't believe in one God because your values would be all over the place, right? But one of these people made the claim that there has to be multiple gods, because if you believe in the sun, there needs to be a God for that, and there needs to be a God for this and a God for that. And Peterson eloquently states that no, there aren't multiple gods. There are multiple values. We all have multiple values. We value our families. We value our careers. We value our health. You know, we put things that are important to us as priority. You may think my priorities are silly, and I may think your priorities are silly, but it doesn't matter because they're our own. Atheists say, no, you can't have that. You can't prioritize one thing over another because then you're worshiping stuff, and that's just absolute garbage. Let's go.
True. So you don't actually have to answer the questions. And plenty of Christians don't like that because they clearly see that you don't really want to be associated with
I can
Christianity.
imagine that I was in a situation where the best I could do as a consequence of my previous mistakes was to tell the least amount of lie I could manage. But that would likely indicate that I had made all sorts of catastrophic errors on my way there.
So
Right.
you would lie to save someone's life. So again, you do believe it to be true in that circumstance, even though you lied in that scenario. So
Not
clearly that's
without
not what
the
you see to be true.
context that I put it in.
You were not willing to
I
die for it. You
said-
were not willing to let other people die for it. So that's not what you see to be true then.
He's putting words
Seemingly.
nothing in.
You're doing exactly what I said you were doing at the beginning of the conversation. You're generating an impossible, restricted, hypothetical with no precursors to back me into a
How is
corner.
it possible? Is there something contradictory about it? Nice this question. It's just a basic hypothetical. Like I could ask
It's
you,
just a basic,
yeah.
intractable moral choice that's stripped of context.
lie to save your children, your mom, your dad.
I don't think lying would save them.
Can there ever be a circumstance logically that lying could save someone?
Yeah, and if you're steeped in sin, you're likely to live in circumstances like that.
Bingo.
I'll give you an example. If you're in Nazi Germany, and it is the case that there's Jewish people in your attic and you're trying
I
to
know
protect
the
them,
example.
would you lie to the Nazis? If
I
they're
would have
Nazi?
done everything I bloody well could, so I wouldn't be in that situation
you
to begin
lie?
with. It's a hypothetical, and it's
You
not
can't answer
answerable.
hypotheticals.
No, you can't.
No, I can't answer a hypothetical like
What?
that because
Did
it's
you eat
far.
today?
There again, it's the quick fire questions. Why can't you do this? Why can't you do that? This is not a debate. They're just ambushing this guy, and I think he should have known this. He's getting frustrated because these kids are nitwits. They're morons. They have nothing else in their lives to live for. And like I said, they're more religious than anybody else because atheism is their religion. And it's sad because this kid here, if the Nazis were at the door, this kid would shit his pants. You can look at his face. Does he look like he has any strength or value? Absolutely not. All right, let's move on to the one that got everybody riled up, and it's this kid right here. And he is as smug and as juvenile as it gets. Just take a look at the shirt. I mean, Jesus Christ. Now, this is what everybody's playing because this kid was just rude and he was an asshole, and I would have asked him to leave too. But this is claim number 3 from Peterson. Everybody worships something, including atheists. And atheism is a religion. These kids are these people, or atheists in general. Yes, I'm going to generalize here. They will try to destroy your credibility because you believe in God. Now, of course, if the shit hits the fan and there's a war going on, these are the kids, these are the people, because they have no value, no core. They're the ones who would run to another country, hide, avoid conflict at all costs because they're cowards. They have no belief system. I mean, again, if we had to give this kid a gun, he'd pee his pants.
What's your name?
Danny,
Danny.
you're saying atheists worship things or people or places, whatever. Can you be very clear about your definition of worship again?
And the word worship.
Attend to, prioritize, and sacrifice for.
Okay, that's it. That's your understanding of worship.
Well, I could flesh it out, but that'll do for the time we have.
Okay. Do Catholics attend to Mary?
Oh, yes.
Okay. So do they fit that description of worship?
Yes.
Here's where Peterson is wrong. Catholics do not worship Mary. They hold her in oh God, what's the word? They hold her in high regard. They revere her. That's the word I was looking for. So you don't pray as a Catholic. And again, I am a Catholic, cafeteria Catholic to the upteen notion. But they don't worship Mary. Catholics will only worship and pray to God. Right? There's the Holy Trinity, right? There's the Father, the Son, the Holy Ghost. Technically, you don't even pray to Jesus. Now, I might be wrong. I might be blurring the lines there. But Jesus is part of the Holy Trinity, so you can pray to him, but you only worship God. Now, this kid over here, again, uses more of the Protestant argument that Catholics worship Mary. They do not. And I understand what people are going to say, that there are statues of Mary and pictures of Mary all over the place. She's revered. She's honored, just like the apostles, just like the saints. Nobody's worshiping the saints. No one is, holding the saints above God or Mary or the apostles. You pray, you worship God. You worship and pray to God. You can revere and honor the saints, Mary, the apostles, as a lot of Catholics do. If you go to Spain, you go to Italy, especially, there's a saint day almost every week because the saints mean a lot to them, and that's okay. But to these atheists, well, you can't worship, Mary. Why not? Why not? Are you a feminist? Are you anti-feminist that you can't worship a woman?
Yes.
So you would say Catholics and other people that revere Mary, like the Eastern Orthodox tradition, worship Mary.
Well, they might not put her in the highest
But you would.
He just contradicted himself. So they revere Mary. He knew that. But he asked if they worship her as well. No. Now, Peterson should have answered this directly. I don't know why he didn't. Maybe he doesn't know. But that's how it is.
put it that way.
No,
You just said it. Now you're taking it back
there's
now?
still a hierarchy.
Okay, there's a hierarchy, but within
And
the
there's something at the top.
all right, you can worship things
Mary is
below.
quite a ways up the hierarchy, but not at the top.
Let's go over your definition of worship again. What's your definition of worship?
Attend to,
Attend to.
prioritize,
Do
and
Catholics
sacrifice for.
what do Catholics attend to? Do they prioritize Mary over all other human beings?
No, I didn't say overall, did I? I didn't
Well,
add that to my definition.
You understand?
I said there was a hierarchy as well.
You attend to
So you
Catholic.
can attend to something trivially, or you can attend to it deeply.
Okay, now
there's
you're
a-
adding stuff to the definition, but your original
I
definition.
added the hierarchy part at the beginning.
Are you
just
familiar?
didn't understand it.
Are you familiar with the Immaculate Conception?
Why is that relevant?
Because you go to a Catholic church, don't you? Are you?
Why is that? What does any of this have to do with the claim? This is badgering. And look at this kid's face. Like the semen retention on this dude is real.
Attended recently. You're interested in Catholicism, aren't you?
Sure,
All right. Are you familiar with their doctrines?
somewhat.
Okay, you're
Their
familiar.
doctrines are
How
very
do they
deep.
regard Mary?
Why are you asking me that?
Because you're a Christian.
You say that. I haven't claimed that.
Oh, what is this? Is this Christians versus atheists?
I don't know.
You don't know where
No, it's not. It's Jordan Peterson versus atheists. And look at how they giggle like children. This is where Jordan Peterson haters are gleeing, and they're so happy because they're saying, well, he claims he's not a Christian. No, he's going up there as Jordan Peterson. And his mistake was that he was trying to be more of an academic and a psychiatrist and explain in depth his answers and trying to figure out try to understand these people rather than just debate them. Now, this is not a debate. This guy is rapid firing questions, and he's trying to get him in a gotcha moment by repeating the same question over and over and over and over and over again.
you are right now.
Don't be a smartass.
Well,
and I mean
either
it,
you're a
'cause I
Christian
won't
or you're
talk
not.
to you if you're a smartass.
Oh, either you're a Christian or you're not. Which one is it?
I could be either of them, but I don't have to tell
could be.
you.
You don't have to tell me. I was under the
it's
impression I
private.
was invited to talk to a Christian. Am I not talking to a Christian?
No, you were invited to.
I think everyone should look at the title of the YouTube channel. You're probably in the wrong YouTube video,
You're
Hey,
really quite something. You are.
aren't I? But you're really quite nothing, right? You're not a Christian.
Okay, I'm done with him.
So that was childish. That was stupid. That was totally unmanly. And he's not a man. None of these people are. I mean, look at this guy. And Peterson had all the right to tell him to take a walk, because this debate was just, it wasn't a debate at all. This was more of an ambush than anything else. And again, I don't know what Peterson was thinking taking this. I think maybe he thought he was going to help these kids. Maybe he thought he was going to enlighten them in some way. But obviously it failed. And now the Peterson haters, any one of these people who just think very low of Jordan Peterson, they're coming out now saying he got destroyed and he's not a Christian, and you have all these Bible thumping guys now, quoting Romans this and Deuteronomy that, and this wasn't about Christians versus atheists. Christians never win that argument, because an atheist has no reason. These were childish nitwits that ambushed this man, not willing to debate this guy. And Peterson is getting dumped on now, but again, by these I would say jealous people who claim to be Christians, who probably wanted him to Bible thump, and that's just not how he's wired. Now the question would be, what happens if the roles were reversed, right? Let's say Chris Hutchins, he passed away, of course. He's an atheist, stone cold atheist, or Richard Dawkins. What if it was them, one of those guys, against 20 Christians? How would that go? That's what I want to see next. Because believe me, those guys, and Hutchins was a wonderful writer, not a great writer. He was a wonderful writer. He would have gotten frustrated if he was attacked this way. And of course, the news media would have Christians portrayed in a very bad light. But this video shows something that is more concerning. It shows how childish the Generation Z and millennial generations are. If these are the adults in the room, we are fucked. We are in great trouble with the simpleton arguments, the simpleton word salads, the rapid fire questions, the semantics, which were awful. It's a tiresome game, and you do not debate atheists. There is no debating with them. They're closed-minded, and they'll never change. They're rejecting religion because they feel God rejected them. So of course, they take the high ground and they say, well, if God rejected me, he must not exist. That's the narcissism in them. And that's the sadness in them. And they need to be prayed for. We have to pray for them, not exonerate them or shut them out. But the best thing to do is to ignore them. You cannot work or surround yourself with a toxic, closed-minded person. It just doesn't get you anywhere. And that's the man memo here. The closed-minded person. A closed mind is a fortress of ignorance, as we saw here. It's built with fear, it's built with pride, and it's built, most importantly and most frustratingly, with stubbornness. People like these guys not only reject new ideas, but they also block their own paths of growth. These people are in their 20s, mid-20s. They will be the same way in their 30s and 40s and 50s. because they refuse to accept new ideas. These people live in a box where everything must operate according to their rules, their way of speech, their way of thinking, their way of living. Anything different is perceived as a threat, and they ridicule that threat. Their confidence serves as a facade because true confidence comes from knowing that you don't know everything. We've talked about that before. These people, of course, think they know everything, and that's the failure. That's the pride before the fall. I always looked at Tom Landry, great football coach, tremendous innovator of football. He grew to a certain status as a guy who no one questioned about his game. Now imagine you're a head football coach, and we're going to use Landry as an example. You've had a great run of years like he did, but there are signs that the game is changing and that your team is falling behind competitors like the Cowboys did. The league and the game is always evolving, so you must always evolve. Now, Landry, he kept his same mentality. He drafted the same way. He kept his game plans the same way. Maybe had he listened to some assistant coaches or some new fresh ideas, maybe if he had listened to coaches who suggested implementing more modern game plan to improve efficiency and team performance, maybe the Cowboys would have been better and he wouldn't have gotten disgracefully fired like he did in 1989. But he might have dismissed, and again, I'm going by what I'm thinking he did and by all the newspaper articles I read at the time. He may have dismissed ideas outright, saying, "Hey, listen, my way has worked forever. It'll work fine again." But that's not what happened. And as a result, the other teams in the league made significant upgrades in formations and team development and team strategy, and his team struggled with declining performances that ultimately led to his firing. Now, instead of acknowledging the problem, some people, I'm not saying Landry, some people may blame their staff, maybe they'll blame referees, maybe they'll blame even their luck. But they never question their own entrenched mindset. A closed mind doesn't just block new knowledge, it damages the growth of everyone around it. People will walk away from you. The evolved man, on the other hand, isn't afraid to admit that they don't know everything. It's actually it's a beautiful thing because you're always learning something new. Life, it's like a flower blooming every day. They admit that they don't know everything and are always willing to learn more. It's refreshing. The Stoics remind us that wisdom isn't about always being right, but to have the ability to adapt and to improve. And that's what we preach here, right? We develop, we create, we have purpose, we improve, we evolve. Adapting to your surroundings is a big part of that. And if you notice the tendencies in yourself, remember that embracing innovation not only fosters personal growth, but it also creates a more productive work environment. Be brave enough to say, I may have been wrong on that. Learning crumbles the walls of stubbornness and ignorance, and only then can true wisdom take root. And that's the memo. All right. Let me know what your thoughts are on this. I thought Peterson was given a raw deal. I think Peterson's been given a raw deal by the media and by podcasters alike in some articles. But there are haters all over the place. Satan is busy, as we always say. All right. Thanks again for watching. Please like, subscribe, comment, and share. Be careful out there. As you saw 20 Satanists out there, not atheists. These were Satanists, And Satan, as you can tell, is always busy, my friends. Be a man, have a backbone, because masculinity and common sense are worth standing up for. We'll see you later.